Well, I'm joined now by the radical cleric Anjem Choudary, one of the founders of the controversial Islamist organisation Al-Muhajirun, and by Julie Siddiqui from the Islamic Society of Britain. Also joining us from Amsterdam is Douglas Murray from the Henry Jackson Society. And before we talk to all of them, we've unearthed footage tonight which shows one of the alleged terrorists, Michael Balajo, at a protest by the now-banned group Al-Muhajirun in 2007 outside Paddington Green Police Station in London. Anjem Choudary was also on the march. So, one of the suspects attended your marches, listened to your lectures. You therefore helped radicalise him. Will you apologise for what's happened down in Woolwich?
I'm not going to apologise for exposing the crimes of the British government in Iraq or Afghanistan.
That's not the question I asked. You helped radicalise
let me answer the question in my way. Radicalisation is a stick which is used to beat the Muslim community. The fact is that there is conflation between exposing the British foreign policy, between things like rendition, Guantanamo Bay, killing innocent men, women and children, which I have no apology for whatsoever.
But
and we will continue to expose.
You helped radicalise this suspect, and now a British soldier is dead
without
on the
allowing me
Woolwich
to answer the question the way that I want.
The question I'm asking is, you helped radicalise him
let me just tell you something.
because you were there with him on these marches. Will you apologise?
Radicalisation is calling for the Sharia nowadays. Radicalisation is exposing the British government. Radicalisation is commanding good, forbidding evil. We say, and we've always said, that we live here under a covenant of security. It's not allowed to target innocent people in return for our life and work being secure. And we've said that over the years.
Radicalisation
but the fact is the biggest radicalising factor is the British government and their foreign policy.
But radicalisation is also about justifying violence, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Will you take some responsibility for what has happened on the streets of Woolwich?
Pejorative like radicalisation, fundamentalism, extremism is used by the British government to silence a section of the community which expose their own policies. There's something called Islam. Islam calls for the Sharia. Islam says that people have a right to defend themselves. And that's what we propagate. We don't propagate something outside of Islam.
Douglas Murray, how should the government respond to the kind of things that Anjem Choudary is saying there?
Well, it's very difficult in a way for the government because Al-Muhajirun and its offshoots have already been banned. Its offshoots have been banned for many years. And this group, of course, and its activities predate 9/11. I mean, I think it's very important to remember that Amer Mirza was convicted, first a member of Al-Muhajirun, was convicted in 1998 for his attempt to firebomb a British army barracks. There have been a spate of attacks. We've worked out that about 20% actually of convictions, of Al-Qaeda-related terror convictions in this country have a linkage with Al-Muhajirun and with Mr. Choudary.
OK, Douglas, let me put that point direct to Anjem Choudary. I mean, that's quite an astonishing figure. I mean, you take some responsibility for that, don't you?
No, not at all. I think that you need to make a distinction between legitimate political and ideological struggle, which we have been doing for about 15 or 20 years in this country. You know, I've never been arrested. I've never been arrested for organising any terrorist activities, any kind of military bases or anything like that. And the reality is that people we come across, we have a huge number of demonstrations and processions and activities. And of course, we come across many people. People may leave our own activities and do things outside of that. But we're not going to be accountable for that.
But there is nothing legitimate about radicalising Richard Dart, who plotted to bomb Wootton Bassett. How many jihadists have you? How many jihadists have you influenced? How many people have they killed?
Richard Dart was in prison for 9 or 10 months. He faced the choice between having about 20 years in prison or taking a plea bargain. He made a couple of phone calls. He typed a few things on a computer.
Wait.
The fact that he was forced to plead guilty doesn't mean that he was planning anything at all.
In court, you radicalised him. It was said in court that you radicalised Richard Dart.
Please.
How many jihadists would you say you radicalised?
For the British government and their own media wing, radicalisation is calling for the Sharia. Radicalisation is exposing their murderers in Muslim countries. Radicalisation is saying that we want the Sharia. The fact is that, you know, these kind of terms are used to demonise the Muslims and to justify your foreign policy.
OK, Julie Siddiqui.
Well, that POS, that piece of crap, Anjem Choudary, Islamist, you know, Cathy Newman really went after him. I mean, she literally went after him. How many men would you say that you radicalized? Do you take responsibility for the radicalization of those other people that went and decided to do some terrorist attacks? How many men have you radicalized? In jail, how many men have you radicalized through your speeches, through other things? And basically all he kept saying was, you know, Sharia law, that's radicalization. It's because of the British policies. And that's all we're doing. We're just talking. That's all we're doing is just talking. Well, a few years later in 2016, this same man, Anjem Choudary, was found guilty and jailed for the sentence of 5 years for terrorist activities. But he got out in about 2 years after basically serving less than half his sentence. And I want to take you to a news article that actually shows back in July of 2023, he was charged and jailed again. Let me take you that clip just so you can see it for yourself. So here's this POS again, this Islamist piece of crap, this Islamist, and just actually an evil, evil person. He has been completely disavowed by all the Muslim groups in England and around the world of that terrorist Islamist group, Al-Mujahirun. And in 2023, here it is right here, British Muslim preacher Anjem Choudary is charged with 3 offenses after being arrested in London last week. This was back in July of this year. He's been charged with membership of a prescribed organization. I hate the way that they talk about this. Why don't they just say he's a membership of a terrorist organization, directing an organization, addressing meetings to encourage support for a prescribed organization, police said. He was up here in court, obviously this is from before. Along with him was a 28-year-old Canadian man, Khalid Hussein. He's been charged with membership of the same prescribed organization. And when he arrived on a flight at Heathrow Airport. Now, it basically says, at one time, and he probably still is, a very high-profile Islamist, preacher. London-born. This guy was born in London, but was freaking radicalized over there, folks. That's the amazing part. You look at me and go, how in the effing world do these people get radicalized in a Western democracy, a Western society? And as I said, he was in prison in 2016 for his support for ISIS or ISIL. Released in 2018. Served half of his 5.5 years. And ISIL has been prescribed as a terrorist group since June 2014, making inviting support for the group a criminal offense punishable for up to 10 years in prison. Now, the judge, Timothy Holroyd, said during his 2016 sentence that Choudary was calculating and dangerous and had shown no signs of remorse. This is the same guy that praised the men responsible for the 9/11 attacks on the United States, and the same POS, the same piece of crap, saying that he wanted to convert Buckingham Palace into a mosque. Amazing, folks. Absolutely amazing. Anyways, let's get back to the video clip and see what else this piece of crap has to say for himself and Douglas Murray's and the other guests' response to this POS.
What's your response to what you've heard there?
Well, I just want to first of all give my condolences and thoughts to the family, friends, and the people of Woolwich. Really, the family and friends of Lee Rigby. Of course, today we're seeing the face to a name, really, and it makes it even more horrific and very, very sad what we saw on our streets unfolding yesterday. I think really all of us, any decent people in this country, will realise that this kind of rhetoric has no place whatsoever in this country. What we saw yesterday and what we're seeing with the likes of the English Defence League, for me, in both ends, they are trying to divide this country in a way that we won't stand for. The good hundreds and thousands of good people in this country, Al-Muhajirun and any of his offshoots have always only ever had tens of people, not hundreds, not thousands. So really representing a very, very small number of people in this country.
And you mentioned the EDL there. I mean, there have been some mosques targeted by the far right. Do you think mainstream Muslims are fearful today?
I think Muslims do feel vulnerable today, and some mosques were attacked yesterday, and we're hearing all sorts of other stories coming through. And of course, we have to all remain calm and measured to make sure that these things don't escalate any further, because that's obviously something that we don't want to see in this country either. So I think Muslims do feel vulnerable today, but I think the overwhelming majority of Muslim organisations and individuals have come out in full force today to absolutely condemn and say that this kind of action has no place whatsoever in this country.
Douglas Murray, David Cameron said that these attacks will bring people together. Are we not terror-struck as a country?
No, I don't think so at all. I'm not terror-struck. You're not terror-struck. almost none of the British nation, I should think, is terror-struck. What we are is united in disgust, Muslims and non-Muslims. You know, it's extraordinary, really, for most of us, because we've all witnessed Mr. Choudary and his group for many years trying to provoke the British people. He's got on his record not only these huge swathes of people that he has helped to radicalise, but of course he's also created the English Defence League, an incredible double whammy achievement for one individual. But you know, one of the things that's most interesting in this is the continual provocation of Mr. Choudary does not persuade and will not persuade most of us to believe that most Muslims are like Mr. Choudary. They are not. Most Muslims in this country are utterly disgusted by him and his actions. And the important thing to remember for non-Muslims is not to be provoked by Mr. Choudary, not even when he says, as he did earlier this year, that his £25,000 a year that he gets in benefits from the British state is what he calls jihad seekers allowance. If I may make one point.
Okay.
Mr. Choudary was almost certainly better paid than Drummer Rigby. That fact is something that we should mull on and I would suggest sort out swiftly.
Boy, oh boy, you talk about the welfare society and how that is. This piece of POS, this piece of crap, was actually getting, as Douglas Murray said, £25,000. What is that, like roughly $30,000 to $35,000 a year in free benefits? And he called that jihadist seed money or something? All this guy is doing and was trying to do was drive a wedge between Muslims and non-Muslims in England. And you have those kinds all over the place. You've got those people, they're race baiters, what we call race traders, right? People like on our side of the pond, Jesse Jackson, Joy Reid, you know, from MSLSD, Reverend Al Sharpton. There's so many more. All the Democrats, basically, they're all like this or whatever, because they just keep stoking the flame. AOC, another Islamist, Ilhan Omar, you know, and her ilk, Congresswomen. These are unbelievably all, you know, gathering what we call, you know, they're just coupled pieces of crap. It's like a sausage, basically. They're like turds floating in the cesspool of this absolute disgusting, vile, race baiting, religious baiting, ethnic baiting, you know, all this stuff that these people do to try to foment, you know, fear of each other, distrust. And then everybody says, oh, because a few people, you know, do something like this and then paint, and everybody gets tarred with the same brush, basically. And that's what we should try to avoid, as the lady was saying there, when being asked by Cathy Newman, you know, what do you think? She's happens to be white British. She's Muslim. And she's basically saying we don't condone anything about Anjem Choudary at all. And it just goes to show you that the man is in jail, has forfeited all of his benefits. Hopefully he stays there for the rest of his life. He was jailed before, like we said before, and then guess what happened? He got out. So I don't know what, but right now the charges are sticking. He's in jail as far as I know as of this past year. Anyways, let's continue on with the interview.
I mean, so these suspects viewed the soldiers generally, as legitimate targets. Do you?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that Douglas Murray...
Wait a second.
Douglas Murray is talking rubbish. I'm not getting 25k a year.
We'll leave
I'm
that
not
aside.
on JSA for your information.
Leave
Check
that
your
aside.
facts.
Yeah, we'll
and she's wrong as well. We don't have 10 or 100 members. We have many.
Right.
But the point is, soldiers who are fighting in Afghanistan, obviously the people have the right to defend themselves. What we say in Britain is that we have a covenant of security. In return for our life and wealth being protected, it is not allowed for Muslims to target the life and the wealth of the people with whom we live. But I tell you something.
Okay.
The people who are oppressing the Muslims is the British government. The people who are banning ideological and political struggle are the British government. They don't allow people to express
themselves. Anjem Choudary, you've had your time. You've had your say. Thank you very much. We have to move on now.
That piece of crap, AC. We're just saying that that's not true, that he's not getting paid. but I believe it was. I will recheck again, but I believe that he was getting paid. His wife also was then being investigated on suspect of being involved with prescribed the British Knights. Oh, the British, you guys are so nice. You know, just so nice with the words. You just want to be liked. You don't want to, you know, tip the tea table over. You want everything to be nice and smooth and just easygoing and, you know, let people have their say. That's what happens because these people, you give these people an inch. They don't want a mile. They want your entire freaking country, folks. They want your entire freaking, you know, nation. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe. If we've earned it, hit that subscription button. Like, share, and follow us. You all know what to do. Check out our other video links here and there. And I'll leave you with my final thought as always, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.